Low delivery speed, one of the most common concerns of top management. Many companies strive to be the first in the market, to introduce products or services first, to offer new features, or to implement conceptual improvements ahead of competitors. When one company becomes the first, others must deliver their alternative solutions as quickly as possible. The speed of customer value delivery becomes a critical success factor, yet many companies suffer from slow delivery. Some try to increase their capacity by hiring more teams. Another common solution is to adopt Agile frameworks. Unfortunately, most attempts result in barely noticeable acceleration or even a slowdown, while costs rise rapidly and so do management concerns. Moreover, such companies often experience a decline in the customer value added by these deliverables. For some companies, this significantly constrains their business potential. For others, this is the way to lose everything. While there are multiple root causes for slow customer value delivery, dependencies are among the most common and impactful. However, not all dependencies are the same. While some dependencies have a moderate impact, there is a particular type that drastically decreases the speed of value delivery and introduces several other serious disadvantages. In this video, I will show a real-life case of a company that tried to understand what was slowing down their delivery. This case is so common that you will likely find many similarities with your organization. I will also share their findings, including the most detrimental type of dependencies, and finally, I will provide recommendations on how you can address these root causes of slow customer value delivery. If you are interested in similar topics, hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to give a like to this video if you find it helpful. In this example, to consider the speed of value delivery, management analyzed the average cycle time of customer-centric tasks. Therefore, they measured the time passed from the point when the task was prioritized until the task was completed and the customer value delivered. Before this analysis, many managers assumed that the only components of the overall execution time were the timeframes of actual work done within the process steps performed in a sequence. For instance, in the case of this company developing a software product, step A, representing analysis, was followed by step B, standing for development, followed by step C for testing. Actually, many people imagine value creation process as something where steps are done in a sequence and each step is done once only. Usually, this false assumption is based on reviewing task statuses, while those do not reflect all interactions that happen in reality. In the considered company, some managers recognized the existence of explicit or implicit queues at each process step. This means that when a task is prioritized, it is not taken to work right away because analysts are already busy with other tasks. So this task would have to wait in a queue. Important to note that such queues are often kept invisible to others. People do not visualize such queues at all, but just take tasks in some order. So when other tasks are done and this one is waiting, the respective time is measured as a waiting time. Queues are the sources of waiting time. Obviously, the longer the waiting time, the later the task will be delivered. Now, after the task passed the first step and the actual work time is recorded, it takes its position waiting in another queue of developers. Here, the task waits while several other tasks are tackled and the actual work is done. And the same repeats with testing. Finally, the task was just waiting in queues during most of the process time. When the actual measurement was completed, the management of this organization was stunned by the fact that their previous understanding was just a result of their imagination. In the reality, the process was much more complicated. And this is so common that you are likely to find the very similar happening in your organizations too. As managers discovered, the following was the common case of a customer-centric task execution. When the task was prioritized, it entered the queue of analysis, where on average it waited for 4 other tasks, until actual work on this task started. Halfway through this step, the analyst got some questions to developers. Normally, they just tried to chat with each other to ask all questions immediately. But it also happened that developers could not answer right away. On average, this happened with every task. In such cases, the analyst could not proceed with this task and had to put it on hold until receiving answers. Normally, they had a bunch of such tasks on hold that they would tackle in some order. That was another invisible queue of pending tasks. Luckily, developers in this organization understood that those were just small questions, and they did not put them on their main task queue. Yet, they had a bunch of such questions awaiting their responses. They tackled these questions in some order, so that was another implicit queue of small requests. This queue also added some waiting time until the question was answered. In the case of this company, on average, the same question required further clarification, and this small question-answer cycle happened twice. Although the analysts did not put their task at the very bottom of the task queue, they still had the ongoing task to be finished, so some waiting time still had to be added. On average, analysts had 3 iterations of asking questions during this process step. Here, for the sake of simplicity, we just visualize that the questions were to developers, while in reality, these questions could be to other analysts or testing specialists too. Finally, the analysis was completed and the task entered the development queue. After some waiting time in this queue and some initial work, developers had some questions for analysts. In most cases, they would just speak to them, but it also happened that analysts could not answer right away, and the question was placed in their implicit queue of small requests. After some time waiting in this queue, the question was answered. In this company, on average, this small cycle would repeat once more until the developer could proceed to work on the task. As managers identified, on average, developers would have to ask for clarifications at this step 3 times. Finally, the development step was completed and the task was handed over to testing. After reaching the top of the testing queue, the task would enter the testing phase. On average, clarifications that could not be provided right away were necessary from developers and analysts. Testing specialists usually found a bug and returned the task to developers who considered bug fixing as a matter of priority. As a common case, while fixing the bug, developers had some questions to analysts and testing specialists that those could not answer right away. Once the bug was fixed, it was returned to the testing queue. On average, 3 iterations of bug fixing were necessary for a customer-centric task. Keep in mind that the task here could be, for instance, a customer feature or its improvement. Finally, the task reached the final testing, was tested, approved, and released to users. While this is a specific case of one specific company, the reality of most companies is conceptually the same. The process of changing products and services is usually full of reciprocal interdependencies, when work items do not just move between people, teams or departments, but at some point return to them once or many times. Let's look at the consequences of organizing with reciprocal interdependencies between steps A, B, and C. While our imagination draws something like this, in reality, the process contains much more iterations of work mixed with waiting time. Now just imagine that at the late stage of this task execution flow, a question pops up. Should we change requirements to maximize value? In the reality of this company, the most common reaction would be to reject any changes. Actually, in most cases, people even did not think of maximizing value, as that could lead to increasing the task execution time even further. Now, let's combine all the episodes of actual work on the left and waiting times on the right side of the timeline. Even a rough visual evaluation shows how huge is the difference between our imagination and reality. So far, we considered a single team separately, while the real product in this company was de facto developed by multiple teams, and it required regular clarifications with business stakeholders in different departments: marketing, sales, legal. Every cross-department or cross-team request that could not be answered right away was de facto placed in some invisible queue. Moreover, even within other teams and departments, people in different roles had a very similar approach of using implicit queues to manage incoming requests. This is another very common case full of reciprocal interdependencies, this time at a cross-team and cross-department level. Now, to illustrate the implications of this, we will have to zoom out the previous representation of the process. Cross-team and cross-department reciprocal interdependencies lead to the exponential growth of the cycle time of customer-centric items. However, even this is not the actual reality, because we assumed that all work packages in queues are of equal sizes. In reality, work package sizes vary significantly. That further increases cycle times. Reciprocal interdependencies cause severe consequences. My practice shows that the cost of actual work increases between 2 and 7 times. This happens, for instance, due to multiple misunderstandings between people who work separately from each other, do not identify these misunderstandings immediately, and ultimately have to do some significant rework. They also often spend excessive effort trying to figure out something themselves, refraining from disturbing others, especially from other teams or departments. Other common cost components are the coordination overhead and switching cost that are much higher with reciprocal interdependencies compared to other dependency types. Another critical impact comes from the waiting time that in my practice usually reaches more than 99% of the overall cycle time. It may look like there's no cost associated with waiting since no work is actually done. However, this also means that customer value is not delivered, meaning the increasing cost of missing business opportunities, cost of risk of delivering low value until learning from the customer feedback, and increasing cost of inventory associated with all unfinished changes of the same product or service. I would appreciate if you tell me about your case. Leave comments to this video. Does your organization have reciprocal interdependencies? Do these dependencies impact the speed of delivering customer value? Let's summarize. Reciprocal dependencies are the most impactful type of dependency for the speed of value delivery. They cause numerous work handovers and extremely long waiting times. Coordinating such dependencies becomes a nightmare. Ultimately, nobody is willing to accept changes at a later stage in the process, and opportunities for value maximization are not in focus at all. These dependencies can be found at all levels of the organization. Between departments such as R&D, production, marketing, and sales, between teams such as back-end, front-end teams, and between roles within teams such as developers, analysts, QA. To address the slow value delivery and other problems arising from reciprocal dependencies, redesign your organization to establish product groups that encapsulate all reciprocal dependencies. Ensure that everyone within such a product group shares goals and responsibilities for outcomes. Within this product group, organize teams so that each team covers as many reciprocal dependencies as possible. You might need to use specific tools and techniques to identify the most frequent and impactful reciprocal dependencies. Once proper organizational structures are in place, the rest should be done by people in teams. Therefore, you should create conditions in which it becomes beneficial for people to minimize waiting times in general and eradicate queues with reciprocal interdependencies. Alongside structures with roles, responsibilities, and formal processes, you need to respectively redesign the processes and approaches to rewarding, hiring, career, and professional development. See you in the next episode or in the classroom.